The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Yeah, I'm back, and I was only out a day, but a lot has happened, apparently, on social media with me in that short period of time. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Just want to tell you what we're going to be doing for the next 3 hours with Tony out today. We do college football on Tuesdays. Lauren Druhan used to work here as a producer, loves college football, and we'll talk about what's going on. Yeah, it's slow because we only had the Army-Navy game and the Heisman Trophy this past week, but still, there are things to talk about with college football. And among the things I did this weekend was visit the College Football Hall of Fame. So I'll talk to Lauren about that and other things. Two incredible Monday Night Football games. You know, we've had these dud primetime games. We had two games starting at the same time last night with unbelievable storylines around both of them. We'll get to that. I did not have yesterday to talk about the Shohei Ohtani contract or the big flap about what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's been some moonwalking by both Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes after their incredible kvetching after the game. I mean, come on. It's nobody has said that Kadarius Toney was onside. He was offside. It's a violation. It killed the fun play, but that's the way the rules are set up. And if a wide receiver can't learn something that's taught to most kids when they start playing peewee football, see where the ball is, line up on the other side of the ball, not on the side of the defensive side of the ball, and you'll be fine. And he couldn't even do that. So there's that, and we'll get to that. The reason I was out yesterday is I could have been here, but the way flying is these days, I was really unsure. So I had a flight out of Atlanta on Sunday night at 7:30. And Southwest Airlines, I know they're trying to make improvements from the debacle that they had a year ago, but you just never know. And my flight to Atlanta was delayed, so coming home might have been a real nightmare. So I played it safe and took yesterday off. And, over the years, and I've talked about this and the great fun I've had with a couple of trips that I've had with my son. We went to the Gator Bowl when he was a kid. He really was into the Little League World Series. Just so happened it was regional was being played in Bristol when I was working at ESPN, so I managed to get some days there working at ESPN so he could go to those games, the regional games, and various things that we've done. So now he's in his 30s, and the time has passed where I call him and say, hey, would you like to go to the game? Because he's got his own friends and, he's going to be married next year and he's a grown man. But I was really happy when he called and said, hey, the way this is going to work out, this would be really good. You have a bye week. Commanders aren't playing. And he's a big Indiana basketball fan, went to Indiana. And he saw that they were playing this holiday doubleheader in Atlanta on Saturday. And my nephew is on the training staff with the Falcons, and he saw that the Falcons have a home game with the Buccaneers. So he said, why don't we make a weekend of it? He lives in New York. I live here, of course, and so we'll meet in Atlanta, and we'll stay with my nephew. He has a nice house in the suburbs there, and we'll get to see both games. We'll get to hang out with Ari when he has some time. He didn't have a lot because he's involved, obviously, with game and game preparation. But it was all good except for the games. Indiana went up 12 on Auburn and then got smoked. They lost by like 30. That was at, by the way, the new State Farm Arena where the Hawks play. Nice, very nice. And then across the street is the Mercedes-Benz Arena where we went on Sunday to see the Falcons play the Buccaneers. And that turned out to be a really good game. Unfortunately, the hometown team lost, and so the celebration that we were ticketed to attend after the game with the families wasn't as joyful as it could have been. But really, really fun to hang out with my son, and we did the South thing. We had breakfast at the Waffle House, and I took a couple of pictures that I put up on Twitter and Facebook of the two of us wearing Falcons gear, and I got, whoa, jumping off ship, huh? No. It's just when in Rome, you do what they want you to do. And my nephew said, here are 2 shirts. Please wear them to the game. You're sitting in the family section. I said, fine. So, I'm not jumping to the Atlanta Falcons, and no slight to the Falcons, but if I were jumping, that's not where I would jump. Okay, there are plenty of other bandwagon teams to jump on, and I'm not doing that. I've lived and died with this football team, mostly died in recent years with the Commanders, but they gave me some great years in the 70s and the 80s, and I just can't forget those. So sorry. And the nightmare run of Dan Snyder, that's over with now. And I did survive that. In fact, you could almost say I thrived on it, because most of my sports radio career in Washington has been spent discussing the dysfunction of the organization under Dan Snyder. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you to my son for arranging that, and my nephew for all the hookups and things that we got to do on Sunday. That was really great fun. All right, last night, you had two unbelievable games. Let's start with the Giants game, and it starts really in the pregame, where you have roaming the sidelines the agent for Danny Devito, who he and his family have jumped headfirst on this, I would say, stereotyping of Italians. His nickname is Tommy Cutlets because, as you know, it's a long story, a lot talked about. He was an undrafted free agent who's on the team. He's from New Jersey, and he lives with his parents still. He's 25, lives with his parents. Not exactly George Costanza. It's just a convenience thing. And, he didn't know how long he's going to be with the Giants. They could release him at any point and try and catch on with another team. So, why rent out a place when you got your mom to make your bed and make you dinner? His favorite dinner is the chicken cutlets. So his nickname is Tommy Cutlets. But also, the family is all in on this. And they even had this huge tailgate last night with free food for everybody. He said, we're giving the whole Italian show craziness. We're going to give them the Italian theater they've been asking for. 300 chicken cutlets, got Italian sandwiches, baked ziti, sausage and peppers, rice balls, everything Italian. I'm going to have my guys setting up sandwiches with Italian headbands on. We've got an Italian flag with Tommy's picture on it. They've been begging for it. We're going to give it to them. And then the cherry on top was the shot of the agent for Danny DeVito, not Danny DeVito, but Tommy DeVito, roaming the sidelines. His name is Sean Stellato. He was wearing a black pinstripe suit with a black hat and a gold bracelet on his wrist. I was watching the Manning cast when his picture popped up, and this is a pretty good get by Peyton, I got to say. Peyton and Eli discussing what they're seeing in this guy, Sean Stellato, roaming the sidelines.
Who is this guy he's talking to? Okay, look, whatever you need, I got you. I'll take care of it, all right?
Come on, Pay, that's his agent. Of course that's his agent. Come on, Tommy DeVito's agent.
What's in the bag? What's in the bag? What's in the bag? I want to know what's in the bag.
Some cutlets for later.
It looks like mom. It looks like Johnny Fontaine from The Godfather.
Ooh, that's not bad. But it's stereotyping. And I said to Rex Minturn before the show, if they had a Jewish quarterback and the Jewish family is cooking up latkes in the parking lot and playing Hava Nagila, and every time the cameras come to them, they're dressed like rabbis, and it's an Italian family. It's their right to do it. They're lapping up the limelight. They seem to love it. Don't you think, though, it's a little over the top?
It's too much. Too much, too fast.
Right. I mean, this is, when we had Jeremy Lin, the Linsanity, and this could be that. This could easily be that with the Giants. He could get opportunities next year and wind up, throwing 4 interceptions, and we'll never hear from him again. But in the Linsanity case, I mean, did the family set up a big walk outside Madison Square Garden and cook up, Chinese food? No, they didn't. They had pride that this is an Asian American who's succeeding. And I just wonder, people who are Italian Americans, do they look at this stereotyping, which the family is embracing, as a negative? I think they do.
It's kind of fun, I guess. I guess it's making them money, but it really does seem like they're just attention. Yeah,
they like it. I mean, look, and every time they're given an opportunity to talk about Tommy DeVito, they go right to the Italian stuff. Even Tommy, he was talking to an outlet called the Salem News, talking about his agent, Sean Stellato, and says he's the Italian stallion of sports agents. Okay, this is your deal. But, yeah, it's and it may get tiresome after a while. It's not tiresome now for them because they're winning and miraculously, kind of back in it right now. They're 5 wins. That doesn't sound like a lot, but they won 3 straight. And, depending on how things fall in the upcoming weeks, they could be back in the hunt. This is Tommy DeVito, who did pull off the game-winning drive to set up the winning field goal and, was kind of nonchalant about the whole thing.
Go execute a drive that we practice every day before practice, which is a 2-minute drive. We do it every day, different situations. Some overall, the practices we've had that exact situation or something very similar to it. So just go out, execute the offense, and go win a game.
How much do you like being in that situation?
I mean, you enjoy it when it's an outcome like this, right? I enjoy being on the field any play, no matter what play it is, so I'm just trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, he's still at the point where he's like pinching himself. Ooh, I'm playing quarterback for the Giants. But he's also getting it done, pulling off these drives like he did last night, 8 plays, 57 yards to set up the winning field goal. And Brian Daboll, the coach, was asked, well, what'd you tell him when you sent him out on the field? He said, it was really nothing. Here's a couple of plays you like. Go out there and rip that son of a bee. Pretty simple. And, at 5-8, who knows what can happen from here. This is Scott Van Pelt talking to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman about what they witnessed on the field last night in New Jersey.
Joe, I thought you said it really well on the broadcast. Look, for all the fun and the sideshow and kind of a Linsanity kind of a feel to this DeVito story, guy plays well and leads them on a game-winning drive. You had the best seat in the house. What'd you see?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I mean, when you don't have a rooting interest in it and you can just sit back and witness it, and all the shots that we had of the family and the friends and the family section, and he's going to go to bed tonight at some point in his house with his parents, and tomorrow, evidently, his mom's going to make his bed.
Yeah.
So I thought he played great, and I think sometimes, with the world we live in today, some of that stuff overshadows how somebody would play in a game like this. But I thought he was really good and made clutch throws when he had to.
Joe, I have a feeling that's going to be a very late night / early morning when they get to bed in the DeVito house. So then why not, Troy? Look, man. This is hard. You know better than anyone. It's hard to win football games. And who knows where this Giant story goes. But for a night, not just that offense, but how that defense made a ton of plays throughout the night. And, I don't know. You tell me. How does this New York fan base go to bed this evening?
Well, happy. I know that. They haven't had a lot to cheer about for the most part. But it feels good. I mean, what Tommy DeVito was able to do and what he's done the prior games, we talked about it coming into this game, that, he's given this team a little energy, a little juice, and that's what's been lacking. And then the way that he was able to do it tonight was just really a lot of fun. I hate it for the Packers and what they had built, but for Tommy DeVito to come back after they'd given up the lead and make the plays that he was able to make, I thought he was fantastic. So it's a great story. It's fun. It's good for the NFL. It's good for us tonight. It was awesome.
Yeah, he only had 4 incompletions, was not sacked. And kudos to the Giants for getting that done on Monday Night Football. And it's rarely happened that a guy has come out of nowhere in the middle of the season and created this kind of sensation, both on and off the field, with the way that the family is playing up its Italian roots. It's quite a developing story. We also had at the same time, and again, I'm not sure why the NFL did this. They have had doubleheaders on Monday night before, but they stagger them. Like the first game will start at 7, and the second game maybe at 8:30. Both these games started at 8:15, same time. It was kind of interesting for the Manning cast, though they were a little bit befuddled at times where to go, which game to concentrate on, because they were doing both games like on split screens, or they would go to one and go back to the other, kind of like Red Zone Channel. The Mannings do Red Zone Channel. But what was lost was that these were 2 spectacular endings that kind of get mishmashed together because they were going on pretty much at the same time. The really more stunning game, even more than what Tommy DeVito was able to do last night, was what the Tennessee Titans did against the Miami Dolphins. It is the upset of the year. It was at Miami. The Dolphins were favored by 13.5. And in the final minutes, this game looked over. Dolphins were up 14 points. They scored 45 here last Sunday. Could have named the Sunday before. could have named the score. I mean, they could have done what they wanted and apparently took their foot off the gas. And Will Levis, who at this time last year was, I think, still Mel Kiper's number one pick on the big board. He thought he would be the number one player taken in the NFL draft. Didn't go until the second round. Had to win the job in the middle of the year. And he's the one that pulls the big comeback. Titans go on 2 touchdown drives in the last 4.5 minutes. He threw for a career-high 327 yards, becoming the first rookie to throw for 300 yards on Monday Night Football. It's the third largest upset in Monday Night Football history, which goes back to 1970. And according to the Elias Bureau, the Titans are the first team to win in regulation after trailing by 14 or more with less than 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter since the Raiders on September 12th, 1976 against Pittsburgh. I mean, think of all the comebacks we've seen in the NFL, whether it was Manning or whether it was Brady or even that doesn't even include the Joe Montana era. Yeah, the Joe Montana era, which started in 1979. It's the biggest comeback with less than 3 minutes since that. And, Levis is as a second-round pick, making his 6th career start in this game, and obviously very thrilled when he talked to the reporters after the game.
Awesome. I mean, we knew we had an opportunity to do something special tonight, on national television, probably our last primetime game. Hope America liked what they saw.
What do you think you showed them?
Hey, that we are a heck of a team. Let's go, come on. I think we showed them the type of team, we always thought we could be this season. Obviously, we've had some lulls, but we got a special locker room, special guys across the board. Defense played a heck of a job against, such a potent offense. I'm so happy for them and so glad we were able to grind it out at the end there.
When the mistakes happened in the fourth quarter, felt like your backs were against the wall. How did you find the will to push this team forward to get the W?
Yeah, I mean, starting off a drive just on a bad pitch like that and just handing it back to them, I know, not doing us any favors, but, it shows our perseverance and our ability to just go out there and just put it behind us and put together 2 2-minute drives there in the last 4 minutes. I mean, that's what it's all about, baby. I'm just so happy for the guys.
You said the word perseverance, and it just makes me think about your journey even to this point, maybe being doubted a little bit in the draft. You have taken that and used it to fuel you going forward. What does that mean to you as you stand here with a big win on the road?
I'm just trying to be a better version of what I was yesterday. All that stuff's cool, and I definitely used it a little bit, but I'm just trying to be, the best version I can of myself. And these guys on this team have helped me become that each and every day. So thank you so much to all my guys on the team, all the coaches, and the Titans for believing in me and taking me.
And it works out well for Washington with Tennessee winning last night because Washington gets closer and closer up the board to maybe as high as the number 2 pick. It's a long shot at this point. New England's got only 3 wins, and Washington has 4. But these upsets that are happening, Giants taking themselves out of the mix, nice. Good for Washington. We'll hear what Ron Rivera has to say about the state of his team as he brings them back to work for this slog through the last 4 games. Plus, there's an injury for Jamin Davis, which we will get to as well. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, we're in for Tony today. Pretty typical Tuesday. Lauren Druhan joined me at 10 o'clock. Talk college football. As we kind of hit a lull here for a few weeks. This is the last time we're going to do this because this time next year we're going to start the playoffs this weekend. And the Army-Navy game, that was it for last weekend, plus the Heisman. And we'll talk a little bit about this. But some other issues to get to, including an excellent story over the weekend about the Heisman Trophy winners who are suffering from CTE. Some of them have passed away, or I guess it was determined after they passed away that they suffered from CTE, but others who are struggling as well and having not necessarily played a long time in the NFL. So it's an issue, and it continues to be an issue. And I've got some thoughts on this, too. When I was at my nephew's house over the weekend, he had a helmet from the Falcons, a helmet. I was stunned at what this thing weighs. I guess it's supposed to protect your head, but on the other hand, it's a battering ram. I thought it weighed like 20 pounds. Maybe it's not that, but it's very, very heavy. And I wonder if that contributes. I mean, it is a big debate, and you heard Mike Ditka say this maybe 10 years ago. Hey, you want to cut down on the head-to-head contact, take the face masks off. You won't have that. And, he may have a point. Not that, CTE didn't occur in the days when guys wore leather helmets and no face masks and things like that. But just now we know so much more about it. And, as Bob Costa said in kind of his exit from NBC, that's one of the big reasons they got rid of him, was that football scrambles brains. And you're starting to see that. All right, Commanders. This is really a bizarre thing for me. It just has this feel of it. Because if you have a regularly scheduled bye week, or what I mean regularly scheduled, like usually the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season, even when they had their bye week in 2012, when they wound up winning the division with 10 games, they had 7 games to go, and they were 3-6 at that point. And, while it didn't look good, they weren't necessarily out of it, even though at the time Mike Shanahan was talking about next year, believe it or not. And to his credit, Robert Griffin III said, no, I'm going to take the bye week off, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to try and get this team into the playoffs. And he did. He was great. That was his one shining moment, as he did get hurt, which, was kind of the beginning of the end when he got his knee turned the wrong way by Haloti Ngata. But it was at a point in the season where it wasn't over. When the Commanders went out on their bye week off that ugly loss to the Dolphins, it was like, do we really want to see them come back and play the rest of the season? I know they're supposed to. I know they got tickets sold. I know there's a lot of money riding on it. But if it wasn't all that, wouldn't you want to say, yeah, let's just shut it down for the rest of the year and get ready for next year and see what you want to do with the roster? But they have to play, and they're going to have to play without Jamin Davis. We didn't find out until yesterday from Ron Rivera that he will miss the rest of the season.
It happened during the game, and he came off for a second. They checked him, and he said he was fine. He went back out there, finished the game, but he was still having a little bit of trouble the next morning. And so they examined him, and then they felt that he needed to get an MRI. And after getting the MRI, they got for a second opinion, and then it went from there. So it was unfortunate. Young man's done a great job for us, and really excited about who he is becoming as a football player. Playing the Will backer for us. He's done a great job. He had to play a little bit of the mic in some of the situations when Cody was down, but that's all part of his growth and learning, and he's done a nice job.
Cody is Cody Barton, who's back from injury, so playing middle linebacker. He's under contract, Davis is, for next year, so he's 4th year, and will, I'm sure, be on the roster for next season, depending on what the new coach wants to do. He was a first-round pick. And as a first-round pick, the team has the option to pick up a 5th year on his contract. Well, they're not going to do that. And the reason is that he's not the player that they drafted. I mean, Rivera can say all the nice things he wants about him, but they drafted him as a middle linebacker in the first round. He was not a good middle linebacker, played that his first year. They moved him to the outside. He's good enough to play there, although in the last couple of years, Jack Del Rio has lit him up a couple of times publicly. And Rivera, the same thing. Now they kind of like what he's doing, but he's doing it as an outside linebacker, which is not as valuable, so there's no way that they're going to pick up the 5th year on his contract, which is yet another failed first-round pick under this regime. And not that we need to discuss this and debate whether or not, Rivera is going to stay and whether he's going to continue to pick the players, but as we come to the end of this, we realize, the last 4 years, while there were, a couple of ups along the way, most of them related to Taylor Heineke, who came off his sister's couch to play really well in a loss to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the playoffs and win some exciting games along the way. It's been a disaster, basically, except for the fact that Rivera was there to absorb the bullets of what was happening off the field with Dan Snyder. I think he did a good job of that and kept this organization as professional as possible. But the thought that a coach who had one shining moment in Carolina when he, with the MVP of the league, Cam Newton, got the Panthers to the Super Bowl and lost to a team quarterback by Peyton Manning, who basically could not throw. I mean, he couldn't throw more than about 10 yards. And the defense of Denver was good enough to beat them in that Super Bowl. I think Von Miller, as a matter of fact, was the MVP of that game. And so he came here with that, and not very much other success in Carolina. They had a losing record in other years, and now he's coming to the end here, and we see, just another example of why it just does not work out when the coach picks the players. Just Mike Holmgren, who got the Green Bay Packers to back-to-back Super Bowls with Brett Favre, won the first one, then lost the second one to the Denver Broncos. He, off of that success, got to do both jobs with Seattle. He was hired to be coach and general manager, which is what most coaches want. They want to pick their own players. So Seattle said, okay, do it. So he did it for a few years, and then they said, this ain't working out with both jobs. So what we want to do is we want to make you the head coach, and we're going to have somebody else as the general manager. That's when Scott McLuhan came into Seattle, and that's when Seattle went to its one Super Bowl under Mike Holmgren. So, it's just the Jamin Davis injury, what it means bupkis in terms of what's going to happen over the last 4 games. But what it means in the grand scheme of Ron Rivera is just another example of failure to produce in the draft. And, we've already got Chase Young out of town. He's gone. That was the first pick he ever made, gone. So, the two number 1 draft picks that he made in his first 2 years basically turn out to be one gone for a 3rd round pick, and another who's going to play out the last year of his rookie contract next year. All right, as for the last 4, the run here, this is Rivera on the expectations as they go into this game against the Rams, which they are touchdown underdogs, and the last 3 games of the season as well.
Now getting ready for this, these last 4 games, this last stretch, it's all about now playing well, playing fast, and, working to win football games.
Already kind of the makeup of this team, the mental toughness. These next 4 games, is this kind of reaffirm of, how you want them to play and what you want to see? Because you already kind of know what they're made of in a sense.
Yeah, to a degree, it's most certainly that's what it's all about. I mean, it really is a little bit of a test, There's, it has to be a one-game mentality. It has to be about coming in and being a professional and doing what a professional does. And that's come to work hard, develop, and then get out there and give your best.
Okay, so that's at least he stopped talking about roster building and culture and things like that. Last thing is on the defensive line. When they traded Sweat and Young, they said, oh, you got young guys who can step up. Well, maybe so, but right now, your 2 stud defensive tackles, your highly paid defensive tackles in Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, aren't really producing numbers, and Allen has already said on a radio station in town that he's thinking of wanting to play someplace else. That does enter his mind. He's not going to demand a trade or anything, but he's looking at what's going to be happening here under a new coach and likely rebuilding and so forth and so on, that this is not necessarily the place that he would desire to spend the rest of his career if it's going to be like that. But Rivera was asked about their lack of production in recent games.
Well, I think what's happened in the interior, obviously, is, especially in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of attention paid to them, and that's been tough. I mean, they really have, had to fight through a lot, be competitive, while, enduring, several extra blockers. I mean, that's kind of how things are on the inside for those 2 guys. Now, they've tried to hold up and hold the point and do a great job for us, and they just continue to work hard at it.
Yeah, but again, if you don't have your 2 stud defensive ends, then that's where the offensive line focuses, and so far that has not worked out well. Okay, let me get to Shohei Ohtani. I know this is a story from Friday afternoon. Saturday is when it broke, and not stunned that he went to the Dodgers, but when you hear $700 million, when the lead up was, he's not going to be able to pitch next year, and while his contract was figuring to be north of $600 if he could do both, it's going to be in the 5s, and you go, whoa, 700. That was like the Dodgers saying, hey, you can go negotiate with somebody else if you want, but here's 700. Take it or leave it. And this stuff about Dave Roberts, who said to the media that they had met with Shohei, and, oh, my God, he spilled the beans. They don't want this to be a public spectacle. Dodgers have taken – no, they haven't taken themselves out because they put down a number that started with a 7, when many thought it would start with a 5. So it started with a 7. And you start, looking at the numbers and you go, about $70 million a year. My God, we've ramped up so quickly from $30 million to $70 million. I can't believe it. Then the story yesterday that he's going to defer all but $2 million a year, meaning he's going to get this enormous balloon payment of $680 million at the end of the 10-year contract. And a number of things on that. One is it obviously allows the Dodgers to go out and get more players, which is what he wanted. And also, as far as the tax burden on him, this would be the advantage that he could likely will be living in another area, maybe back in Japan, I don't know, but maybe in another state where the tax hit won't be as big as it will be in California once he gets that payment. And what it allows the Dodgers to do in terms of the luxury tax. Now, it's not just it's not like he counts $2 million. This is the way this is going to work. Ohtani's cost towards the Dodgers' competitive balance tax payroll, the luxury tax, what we call it, which typically uses the average annual value of contracts, in this case $70 million, but discounts deferred money, will be about $46 million after each year. That puts the cost of Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts towards the luxury tax at somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million annually. The threshold sits at $237 million in 2024. So it's not like he's just $2 million on the cap, but it is the kind of creative cap massaging, not cap because they don't have a cap, but it's kind of the salary massaging that they can do. Now, as for the landing spot for Ohtani, Bob Costas on yesterday with Dan Patrick, and the fact that he did land with the Dodgers is kind of what he expected.
It's probably the Dodgers. You could say that the Yankees or the Mets, maybe New York gives him a little bit more of it's a larger market numerically, but you want him to be happy. You want him to thrive. I think where they were really holding their breath, and maybe it was just leverage from an agent standpoint, but when there was serious talk that the Blue Jays were in the mix, with all due respect to them and their fans and the history of the franchise, it's nothing against them. That would have been bad for baseball overall. You just can't maximize the benefit to baseball as an industry with Shohei Ohtani in Toronto, but you most certainly can with the Dodgers. They're always good. They're often disappointing in terms of what happens in October, but they're always good. There's an almost certainty that you'll see him in the playoffs. Maybe he gets deep into the playoffs. The team itself is a marquee team. They have a national following. They have all the resources to maximize this. They're one of the very few teams that can amortize this investment and actually make it profitable. $700 million just breaks the bank and breaks the previous paradigm. Everybody knows that. Cumulatively, about $300 million more than anybody else has gotten. But to use the word that's been thrown around about him for years, the guy's a unicorn, and so is this deal.
I'm trying to understand the Angels. You lose him, you don't get any compensation, a draft pick or whatever, and you lose him to the Angels or the Dodgers. That's a bad weekend, Bob. But we could see this happening. You don't want to be the GM or owner who traded away Ohtani, but you don't want to be the owner or GM who didn't get anything for Ohtani when he left you.
Well, there was a lot of talk about this on the MLB Network at the trade deadline, of course. And at that point, the Angels, who seem to always sadly disappoint, they were only 3 or 4 games out of the last wild card. And I thought that Artie Moreno and the front office of the Angels actually kept faith with their fan base by saying, A, we're going to keep him, even if it's only for 2 more months, that you get to see this once, not in a lifetime, but once in forever in the history of baseball player. And we're going to make an effort, therefore, in the next couple of months and beyond, to retain him. Now, that effort was unsuccessful. The trapdoor opened on them. They plummeted to below 500. They were not in the race. But the day they announced that they were not going to put him on the trading block, you may remember this, they had a doubleheader in Detroit, a straight doubleheader, not a split, and pitched a complete game shutout or an 8-inning one-hit shutout, and then he hit 2 home runs as the DH in the next game. So at that point, spirits are high around the Angels. I can't blame them. I feel bad. I know there are criticisms of every owner when a team doesn't succeed, but you think about the Angels with Mike Trout, and then they got Pujols, and they got a good player instead of a great player. He was a great player with the Cardinals. What they wound up was with a good player for a while in the second half of his career. They signed Josh Hamilton. At that point, he was an MVP, and he had personal problems, and the trapdoor opened on him as well. They had Ohtani for a while and couldn't get to the postseason with Ohtani and Trout both. You can't say they didn't try. I mean, the Rendon signing, he comes off a World Series title and big RBI numbers with the Nats and doesn't do the same with the Angels. It feels like the whole franchise is snake bit.
I'm wondering Ohtani's impact on the game 10 years, 15 years down the road, where are teams going to be encouraging or not discouraging your pitcher from being a hitter or vice versa, college players? What kind of impact do you think Ohtani will have that way?
Yeah, I can't say precisely, Dan, but there's going to be some. Obviously, there's going to be some. And you know that the best player in high school always pitches and plays some position. And you get a little bit of that in college. And then, of course, they're channeled into whatever the scouts think is their best position, or their college coaches thinks is their best position. But the best players, the most gifted players, at least start out being, many of them, pitchers and position players. And some of them, inspired by Ohtani, are going to want to try that.
Yeah, so that's going to be one thing to keep an eye on. The other thing to keep an eye on with the $700 million contract is what's next when the next big fish hits the market, and that's going to be Juan Soto next year. He's already turned down $460 million from the Nats. Now on the open market, how much will he get? That question to Costas as well.
It probably does a little bit, but I said this on Saturday when the news broke on MLBN. Every GM in baseball is now rehearsing the following speech to that star player and his agent. This is a high tide that raises no other boats, because this guy is completely unique, and so is the Dodgers' circumstance. So this doesn't take a $30 million guy to 40. It doesn't even take an $8 million guy to 12. He's completely unique. Nobody else. Compare yourself to Judge. Compare yourself, if you're a pitcher, to Scherzer's deal or Verlander's deal. But this stands completely alone, and I don't want to hear about it. I don't know if that argument's going to carry the day, or somebody will break ranks and move the next great player, not to Ohtani's level, but beyond Judge's level, beyond Trout's level and Harper's level, and into the 50s or 60s, maybe. But I think by and large, you could make a reasonable argument that Ohtani is in a category of his own, and so the conversation does not include him when we come to the next guy.
Were you ever broached about being a GM of a team?
No. And neither was I ever broached, despite all the talk about being commissioner of baseball. And I always said, I'm neither interested nor qualified, so forget it.
But don't be humble on this. You could have been commissioner. You could have been a really good commissioner.
I might have been a better commissioner than a GM.
Okay.
I really don't think, honestly, that I was qualified, because there are aspects of it, grasp of economics, and especially all the backroom wheeling and dealing and twisting of arms. You have to have a certain kind of temperament for that, and I don't. And the analogy I always used was, if you think a particular columnist is astute politically, that doesn't necessarily mean you think he or she should run for president or be a Supreme Court justice. Their role is to offer thoughts, and people weigh it for whatever it's worth. And I was a commentator about baseball, not just calling games, but about the state of the game. I even wrote a book about it. And if people appreciated that, well, that was my contribution.
Yeah. So, look, Bob Costas loves baseball, and I don't think you could do, both jobs effectively. Love baseball and be a commissioner. You work for the owners. Let's face it. I mean, you work for the good of the game, but in the end, it's the owners that pay your salaries, not the players. And I think, as a guy who still keeps a Mickey Mantle card in his wallet, I don't think that would work out quite so well. But that was Bob Costas, and the point that he makes about all these numbers for these guys. Think about this: Bryce Harper, when he became a free agent at the end of the 2018 season, the Nats made him a 10-year, $300 million offer, $30 million a year. His agent was so intent, Scott Boras, on going past the Giancarlo Stanton contract, which called for $325 million, that he shopped and he shopped and he shopped, and he finally got it up to $330 million over 13 years. Well, this is more than twice that for less amount of time. It's 10 years. It's not 13 years. And this is why you've heard Harper talk about wanting a contract extension. He's already under contract to play until he's 38 years old. This is just saying, hey, I know what we signed for in 2018, but look at the market now. And, who would have thought in 2018 that he would be underpaid? And maybe he is. But the Dodgers were in the right spot, right time, right guy, and they got Shohei Ohtani for $700 million, a giant of a contract. Coming up in the next hour, Lauren Druhan will join me to talk about college football. Also, the raging controversy about whether the Kadarius Toney foot offside should have been called to erase what was maybe the most exciting play of the season. Tony and Mike talking about that yesterday on PTI. And it was 32 years ago today that Dexter Manley gave up football. Nobody loved football more than Dexter. Nobody loved playing for the Redskins more than Dexter. And talk about tempestuous. I mean, he was, in many ways, you could look at him as kind of the Ryan O'Neal of the NFL. We'll get to his story as well in the next hour. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. And we are rolling till noon today with Tony Kornheiser off. With all the NFL on Monday, we push college football to Tuesday. And throughout the season, we've been talking to Lauren Druhan. Big college football fan, used to be a producer here, grew up in the South, loves Auburn football. And while there aren't many games to talk about this week, there are a number of things to talk about in college football. But I got a couple of other things, not college football, to start with, Lauren. One, you're now in Los Angeles, and just a couple of days ago we found out that he's staying in town but moving kind of across town, Shohei Ohtani, for $700 million. What's your feel being in Los Angeles about what impact that has in the area?
It's wild. I mean, the amount of money this guy's getting paid, and honestly, like, my first thought was, good grief, can he stay healthy for that much money? Like, my goodness. And then my second thought was, how far away are we from the first $1 billion contract?
Yep.
I mean, it truly is amazing. I mean, I'm glad he's getting to stay, sort of in the area. But, oof, that's a lot of pressure. I mean, if I sign that kind of contract, I'd have so much pressure on me personally. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see. Yeah,
you lived through a baseball season there, and he kind of made the Angels relevant, though they didn't get in the playoffs. This, to me, I mean, this doesn't seem to just bury them completely in your area now.
I feel like the Angels fan base here is pretty strong. I will say the game that I did go to, I mean, it was like everyone was there to see Shohei. So I do see probably a bit of a drop off, especially when they can just go a little bit further down the road to watch him. I don't really know if they're holding grudges here in Anaheim for him going to the Dodgers, because it is kind of, just a right down the road type of thing. But, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the Dodgers already have, such a big fan base, all the money, all these great players, always relevant. So I think he's going more to be, smaller fish in a bigger pond, where here in, Anaheim, he was a big fish in a small pond. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Nolan Ryan got $1 million a year, and we went, oh my God! and now 700 is, especially now he's only going to take two and put the rest and take it in a balloon payment at the end. I mean, it's just crazy. NFL. All right, you got the Commanders coming to town to play the Rams on Sunday. Is there any juice for now? The Rams are playing better, and they played a really exciting and lost a close game overtime in Baltimore. But do you sense any juice for the Commanders coming to your town on Sunday?
I don't really know. The Commanders and I don't really have a good pulse on NFL football here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it could be fun. I think it could be really fun. It's been fun to watch Sam Howell and all of that. So I don't know. We'll
okay.
see.
All right. But I mean, nobody in LA is going, oh wow, the Commanders are coming in this week. Got to go see them. No, not exactly.
No, I don't know. Yeah, not so much for the Commanders. I don't know. Maybe in the next couple of years we'll see. But but not this year.
All right. The college football from this past weekend, Army and Navy looked like it was going to be, fairly lopsided towards the end, and then Navy made it interesting, coming up short. I did watch the second half of that. And, with all the commercialization of football, and it's commercialized there, too, because they got a lot of money to go to Foxborough and play there. It's all money. But don't you get the sense that that's kind of the last of the innocent era of college football? Do you get that feel?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I really do. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. It just seems like it's actually the purest thing we've got left for college football with they're trying to get their arms around it, and there's now a plan in place that could have actual salaries for players based on how the school divides the NIL money and all that. But amateur athletics has kind of gone away, and maybe this is the last stand for that. Also on Saturday, we had the Heisman Trophy. Jaden Daniels, not a surprise there. Your husband, a big LSU fan. Was there celebration in your house, or was it, that's what we expected?
Yeah, there was a little bit of celebration. We were actually out to dinner when it was announced, and so we filmed it at home, obviously, and then because we kind of expected Jaden to win, so we filmed it to hear all the interviews with the players and their families, and of course Jaden's speech, and it was really, really cool to watch. But yeah, it just makes I feel like it makes you fall in love with each of those players just a little bit more. Like, you get interviews with their families and their parents. It's just like, oh, like these guys are such good guys. I don't know. It just made me fall in love with a Michael Penix that I didn't really know much about, or Marvin Harrison Jr. that I didn't really know much about. I knew all about Bo, but it was cool to watch.
Yeah, and Harrison was the only one that didn't transfer, and even the purity of that is now, well, he could stay maybe at Ohio State for $20 million a year next year. That's on the table as well. But the other three are transfers, and I wonder if we'll ever see a quarterback win a Heisman again who stays at the school that he started at. It's almost like if you don't like exactly what you have in one place, you go to another, which is something that was not afforded quarterbacks of the past. And, do you think we will ever have a quarterback because you have to stay 3 years. That may change too. But since you have to stay 3 years, do you think we will ever see a quarterback who stays at the same school for 3 years and wins a Heisman?
I really think it's very interesting with what's going on with the schools being able to pay players now and the trust that they're having to put money into, because I feel like there's a lot more questions than there are answers at this point, but we could potentially see something where they put in place where, okay, if you're going to get this much money, you have to do this, that, and the other, or you have to stay here for a certain amount of time, or you can't transfer after the first year of sitting, or, there's a possibility to have all these different stipulations with it. So it could possibly lead to more player retention than we've seen with the transfer portal and NIL, because essentially the NIL money is wild, wild west money. Like you can get money from, whoever, a collective or this and that. But with it coming from the actual school, I'm curious to see if we see less and less of the transfer portal. I mean, the transfer portal will always be there and always be a big thing. But, I mean, the last couple of weeks we've seen so many people just jump into the transfer portal, especially Ohio State guys. And so it's like, are we going to see less of that with this trust? You know what I mean?
Well, you bring up the point, and I think it's a good one. If they go to a system where the players are getting actual salaries, you're probably going to have them sign contracts. And yeah,
for sure.
If you don't like the coach and you don't necessarily win the starting job or whatever, you're still there for 2 years. I mean, there's got to be some. There's got to be some ability to, especially if you're taking a guy who's maybe played 1 year of college football in a transfer situation, or an 18-year-old kid coming in. I mean, I imagine Bo Nix at what is he now, 24, right? He's 24 years old. He's a lot different. So, yeah, a lot different mentally and physically. When did you first saw him as a freshman at Auburn? I bet if you put his tape up against that time, he's a different guy at this point,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's truly interesting, and it does bring up, like I said, more questions than answers at this point. But yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Players that come in their freshman year, especially in a Bo Nix situation where he was a true starting freshman.
Right.
I mean, I think the style was like he's played the most games as a college quarterback because he has started every single year that he's played. So it'll bring up a lot of those questions. Honestly, I think the NCAA needed to do something to make themselves relevant again. So it'll be really interesting to see. I also have the question, like, are the different conferences going to have like a a minimum buy-in that they put into the trust? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This now leads for bigger separation of the big dogs versus
Right.
the small dogs. And with the expanded college football playoff, it'll be really interesting to see how the tables turn. So I don't know. I have so many questions for the NCAA.
Exactly. We're talking to Lauren Druhan, a big college football fan. She and her husband, both athletes. Lauren played soccer. Her husband played college baseball. And I want to ask you about a story that was written by Kent Babb in the Post over the weekend. 4 of the former Heisman Trophy winners were diagnosed with CTE after they passed away, and others are struggling with brain-related circumstances. When you have children, and nowadays, girls are playing football too, and given that you and your husband both love college football and were both athletes, I mean, will you have hesitation if your son wants to play football? What do you think?
It's a hard question. And, since we've been talking more and more about kids, I'm like, I kind of want to push off the football as late as possible, especially with my husband being such a big baseball guy, my dad being a baseball guy. I'd push him more towards baseball. But if they want to play football, I mean, obviously I'm going to let them do what they want to do. I feel like the game has taken so many more precautions nowadays than they had in the past to protect the safety of children. And what that does, for them later in life in college and NFL and so forth. So I feel more comfortable with them playing, a more contact sport now. But my dream is to get my kids to be good golfers. Golf, I feel like it's just the best sport. It's the best sport.
Oh yeah, and
yeah.
safe. Yeah, even in baseball, you can have concussions for sure, and soccer as well. But one of the players that had the CTE is somebody we talked about in the last couple of weeks. That's Pat Sullivan, who won the Heisman in 1971, and he had a brief NFL career. He didn't really play much in the pros, so. Whether this brain injury, brain buildup, whatever it is, when you call it with CTE, happened when he was, and I think that's a point you make about younger football. They're starting to look into that. The youth football leagues, this is a good idea for kids to play tackle football when they're 8 and 9 years old. Maybe some of that happened prior to getting to Auburn. But when you're looking at guys who didn't necessarily have great NFL careers and still have CTE, man, that's something that would really, I feel fortunate that my son didn't want to play football. He played basketball and tennis, which are, relatively safe. But I wonder, about people like you who are having kids and learning more and more about the effects of football, how you look at this. So, yeah, it's I'm sure it's going to be a tough decision, especially if your kid wants to play, right?
Right. And I feel like this generation right now that are growing up as kids is really going to be the true first generation of, we see the risk, we're taking these precautions. So it'll be interesting to see like these kids grow up and what they do in college and pros. But, Andy, now with flag football becoming such a big phenomenon, I know it's never going to replace actual football, but go play flag football. Go be good at flag football.
Okay, and that's good as a grown woman. But when your 10-year-old kid says to you, "Mom, all the other kids are going to play on the team, and you're tall, and your husband's tall, and your kid is head and shoulders above the other kids and wants to play." That's going to make it a tough decision for you. It's not as easy. Look, I'm a grandparent already. I can tell you, it's not as easy as you might think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's going to be discussions, and we won't say no to the football, but I'm going to be bringing him to the baseball field. I'm going to be bringing him to the golf course with and see, look how fun this is. And you can make so much money one day when you're older, and it's way less strenuous on you.
I know, but then he or she, because the girls are playing too, they'll say, "Mom, you watch 7 or 8 hours of college football every weekend. You love this as a spectator. How come I can't, do it as a player?" I think And
so true.
And all parents are going to face this. The other thing, and I sent Lauren some pictures from. I went to the College Football Hall of Fame this weekend. Have you ever done? You haven't done that yet, have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
No.
it's good. I mean, it's not the size of baseball, obviously, or even the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but you can spend a couple of hours in there and see some really cool stuff in there. But as you look at the way we're embracing college football now and the amount of money that's involved in it and how we view this, you will see more and more of those kind of things pop up as people celebrate the past and now the present of college football. And the thing that I was thinking about when I was there, because now everything is on tape or on film, the amount of stuff that we didn't have from the early days of football. We only used to have like 1 or 2 college games on a weekend. And now we just have a glut of just tape and information and all that stuff. So we will be able to, as years go by, have football halls of fame that'll have just, oodles and oodles of stuff. So I think that's going to be fun for you when you do take your kids, and maybe your football playing kids. You never know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're going to be interactive Hall of Fame things. I can't wait to see the future of football. But yeah, I'll bring my kid.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Okay, so we'll talk more about the bowl games start rolling this week, and the one thing about this that is so different from the year of college football, not necessarily for the smaller schools that are getting in, but you got schools that have been used to playing before 100,000 people, and then you go to these bowl games and there's 30,000 people there. It's a really different atmosphere, and you got all these guys opting out too to go to the NFL. So it's not quite the same.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Have you seen the opening line of Maryland Auburn?
No, I have not. What is the line? Do you know?
Auburn's only favored by 2.5 right now, so it'll be a interesting game.
Well, and we'll talk more about that, but that is an example of this is going to this type of bowl, not that big a deal for the Auburn fan base. For Maryland, compared to the bowls, Duke's, Mayo, and whatever else they've been to, this is a pretty big deal. So, no, true.
Yeah.
So
it'll be fun.
Bigger for them. All right, Lauren, have a good week. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, you too.
Take care. That's Lauren Druhan, big college football fan. As we had kind of a break in the action here with just the Army-Navy game from last week, and now we get rolling this upcoming weekend, and then the week after that is when we really get into the thick of the bowls. 32 years ago today, Dexter Manley gave it up. NFL career that had seen the highest of highs and among the lowest of lows. We'll get to his story next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, we're in for Tony today, so go until noon. Next hour, we'll hear from Ron Rivera on the injury for Jamin Davis. It'll put him out for the rest of the season. There's more to the story than that, just an injury to a player. I think it's a litmus of what has gone on for the 4 years of Ron Rivera, which will end either January 7th or January 8th after they play the last game of the season against the Dallas Cowboys. And also Bob Costas on the Shohei Ohtani contract, which is a mind blower. It is $700 million. How high can it go? Will we hit $1 billion? We might. We just might. I remember the days of thinking, man, when they get $1 million, that's going to be crazy. And Nolan Ryan got $1 million in 1980, and here we are 43 years later, and that's what I guess Shohei Ohtani will make in a week. Not necessarily, make more in a week, but it's deferred money, so eventually he's going to get what he would be paid in a week, which would be well over $1 million. Just crazy, crazy stuff. So 1981, the Redskins, in their first year under Joe Gibbs, and Bobby Beathard was the general manager, wasn't his first year, but the two of them working together, had one of the greatest drafts in the history of the NFL. They took Hall of Famer Russ Grimm in the third round. Mark May, who played a long time, the Outland Trophy winner, was a first-round pick out of Pitt. They got Dexter Manley. They got Clint Didier. They got, I think there were 3 or 4 other starters in there. Just a tremendous draft overall. And Dexter was really a hidden gem in there. I think they got him in the 4th round out of Oklahoma State. and nobody really knew much about him. But when he showed up at training camp, this guy had size and unbelievable speed. He was 260 pounds and running down returners on the kickoff team. I mean, that's how great an athlete he was. But he was also very self-destructive, and he had a rough childhood growing up, and eventually he got into drugs, which hastened the end of his career. But in his day, he was spectacular and a fan favorite. I mean, he loved being Dexter Manley, and he loved playing for the Washington Redskins. Nobody loved it more than Dexter, and he has a wonderful spirit, still does, great with people. I think the new ownership should really bring him in to be part of the greeting of fans and things like that. I think he's that important to the history of the franchise. But again, self-destructive. And finally, on this day in 1991, after playing for his third team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, his career came to an end. He tried to play in Canada for a while, but his skills had diminished as well. Because of the years of drug abuse and other issues that came along in his life. And this is from Dexter Manley, A Football Life. It's one of the best ones they've ever done. And what you're going to hear is Joe Gibbs. You'll also hear from my friend Steve Buckhantz, who's part of this story as well, Charles Mann, Bob Costas, Darrell Grant, and Ernest Biner, all looking back at the unraveling of Dexter Manley's career and how it ended on this day when he announced his retirement from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on this day, 1991.
I used drugs going into my second year. I met a lady, and she knew where to get the drugs from. I was sitting at the dining room table, chopping it up, and she came out the dressing room with high heel shoes on and bikini, G-strings on. That was it. And I had never seen nothing like that in my life.
Addiction and the lifestyle engulfed Dexter Manley. Others began to notice.
Dexter would come in on Thursday night, talk about the game.
We're looking at two teams.
He wasn't there. Something was not right.
The Eagles are sixth.
There was no reason for him not to show up. He was being paid to show up, and he knew he had to be there.
Skipping a paid appearance is one thing. Missing a practice before a playoff game is another.
The most important thing in his life at that point was playing football. So he wouldn't miss a football practice. He loved it. He loved being out there. So you knew if he missed something, there's something going on.
Did you offer to take a urinalysis?
Yes, I did. Yeah, there's no question about it. I'll leak for you right now.
That's when I remember when going home that night and telling my wife, I said, we're in trouble. Dexter really is bad off.
The lead story in pro football this weekend is Dexter Manley's banishment from the NFL. New Commissioner Paul Tagliabue announced yesterday that the Redskins' all-time leader in quarterback sacks would be subject to the league's most severe penalty after failing a drug test for the third time in his 9-year career.
Just belligerent denial. Knowing I'm going to have to sit out a year, I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it.
You get frustrated. And these episodes started to weigh on Coach Gibbs and obviously the team.
You got to have better common sense than to even try this stuff, really. If you got the nerve to try it, then you make it a big mistake.
After 9 seasons, the Redskins decided to move on without Manley.
It's the hardest thing that a football coach has to deal with. Dexter faced that just the way he did with everything else. Big smile and said, "Hey, Coach, I understand." And I was kind of hoping to hook on with somebody else and get to extend his career.
After a year out of football, Manley hooked on with Phoenix and later Tampa Bay. But his production declined. With 2 games left in the 1991 season, he failed his 4th drug test.
It is with a heavy heart that I have come here today to announce my immediate retirement of the National Football League. It is an era. It is the end of an era. For me, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to the NFL,
to the Washington Redskins, to the Phoenix Cardinals, and to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I look back at it and say, gosh, I could have done more. I should have been more alert to what was going on and tried to get more help for him.
As an athlete, we have two deaths. We have our normal death, we have death of retirement. That first death is horrifying to us.
That's the voice of John Lucas that you heard there at the end, who struggled with addiction himself. All-American at the University of Maryland. He was the #1 pick in the 1976 NBA draft, and also could have had a Hall of Fame career. Still had a really good NBA career, but was in and out of the league with drug issues, and now spends his life helping others who have had drug addictions. He runs a clinic out of Houston. I think Dexter may have been there, and that was part of the story. The Steve Buckhantz part of it, he was then working at Channel 5 as the sports director there, and Dexter was a weekly guest on a TV show that they were doing. As he said, he didn't show up, and Dexter called the newsroom, and he said, I want my ashes sprinkled over RFK Stadium. And, Buck was obviously fearful that he was going to take his own life. That's how far the addiction had gone. And he was able to track down where he had called from, and he got the Houston police on it, and they found Dexter. And he even spent some time in jail after that and, really had real serious drug addiction issues, but has been able to overcome them, as well as illiteracy. He managed to spend 4 years at Oklahoma State, couldn't read, and came to the team and was hiding it and go to great lengths to hide it. In fact, if you watch this documentary, Football Life, you'll see me standing next to Dexter at a Super Bowl with other reporters when he comes out with a newspaper under his arm and he's sweating profusely and he says, I want questions in writing. You have to submit them in writing. And the irony was he couldn't read. And so you think of the life that he had and was still able to accomplish what he did on the football field. The demons that he had to deal with, it's remarkable that he was able to accomplish and overcome. And good for him for getting his life straightened out. And he's still a presence in town. You see him interviewed from time to time. He shows up for events, and I'd like to see the team under new ownership take him in as part of what they do and have him be part of the game day experience every week. I think that would be really a cool thing.